December. Hope that's okay with you. We're going to look at discipleship in the Christmas story. Not so much today, but the rest of the time we'll be looking at that. Today the message is discipleship of a friend. Discipleship of a friend. There's two verses I want to use from Proverbs. Proverbs 17:17 says, "A friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for adversity." And the second one is Proverbs 18:24. "A man of many companions may come to ruin, but there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother." A preacher's wife noticed a man who had been coming to church for several weeks, and so she went up to him and asked him, if he liked the church. And he said, yes, it's full of a lot of very friendly people. And she said, well, what do you think about the preacher? And he said, well, he preaches too long, he prays too little, and I just don't like him. And then she said, well, do you know who I am? He said, no. She said, I'm the preacher's wife. And then he said, well, do you know who I am? And he said, no. And he quickly went out the door, never to be seen again. That's not the way to win friends and influence people. Well, we're talking about how to make disciples. And in this message, I want us to consider what makes a true friend and disciple. Someone has said, a friend is someone who knows the song in your heart and sings it back to you when you have forgotten the words. Someone else has said, friends are the bacon bits in the salad bowl of life. There was a first century Greek biographer who was named Plutarch, and he tells a true story of two Christian friends, Damon and Pythias. And these two guys were such good friends that they just were with each other almost all the time. Well, during the first century, the Roman emperor's name was Dionysius. And Pythias had been condemned to die. He was going to be executed. They had a custom back in those days that you could have one last request. His request was to be able to go home to see his family one more time. And they weren't going to allow him to do that because they figured he'd never come back. But Damon spoke up and said, you let him go home to see his family, and if he doesn't come back, I will take his place. And so Pythias went back home, saw his family, and on the day he was supposed to be executed, he came back. Well, the Roman Emperor, Dionysius, he was so taken by their friendship that he commuted Pythias' sentence and let him live. And asked the two men, what's the secret of your friendship? Why would you be willing to do that for one another? The king was so taken by their friendship that it made a difference. We're talking about how discipleship and friendship go together. There are 4 levels of friendship. And think about the people you know. There are acquaintances. Acquaintances are usually people who you have maybe a knowledge of, but you wouldn't really say they're your friends because you don't really know them very well. You're not really particularly close to them, but you're acquainted with who they are. Then there are casual friends. People that you come in contact with that you didn't plan to, that maybe you get to know somewhat. And then there are close friends, people who maybe you associate with on a regular basis. You spend time with them. You may work with them, you may go to school with them, but there are things that you do together, usually maybe even in a group. And then the fourth level of friendship is intimate friends. Intimate friends are people you associate with, friends that you have, where you have close personal feelings for. You do things together, you have things in common. You have a relationship that's based on trust. I call these people refrigerator friends. They're people who don't have to ask you to open your refrigerator, see what's in there. You know, those are really good friends. Now, when we're talking about discipleship, where do you go to make a disciple? Where do you find someone you can begin to disciple? Well, it's in your acquaintances, your casual friends. Not so much probably your close friends or your intimate friends, because they're probably already Christians. You know, you think about it, most of the people you associate with intimately probably go to your church, or are very, very good friends. So that's probably not the place to start. You want to start with your acquaintances. You want to start with your casual friends. When you have these acquaintances and casual friends, you can turn them into more. You can make them close friends and intimate friends if you spend time with them. So, you see, you've got to be intentional. When you run into somebody, make them more than just an acquaintance. And then you can begin to share them Jesus. There are marks of true friendship. Our text says, a friend loves at all times. It also said, there's a friend who sticks closer than a brother. Would you lay down your life for a friend? Well, maybe you would. Jesus said, you are my friends if you obey me. In John 15:13, he said, he laid down his life for us. Here's a good example. Abraham believed God, and it was counted to him as righteousness. He was called friend of God. That's James 2:23. So, a disciple is a friend who follows someone else. And the disciples that we are familiar with, the 12 disciples, they followed Jesus. How did Jesus make them his friends? Well, he had them follow him. He spent time with them. They did things together. They talked together. He taught them things. When we think about the discipleship of a friend, you see, we think of someone who is very special to us. Someone who we want to follow Jesus like we're following Jesus. As iron sharpens iron, so one friend sharpens another. It's Proverbs 27:17. One thing about being a disciple, it's pretty hard to be a disciple alone. We have to be a disciple together. The great philosopher Winnie the Pooh said, if you live to be 100, I want to live to be 100 minus 1 day. So I won't have to live 1 day without you. Now that's a mark of a true friend. You don't want to live without them. Here are some examples of true friendship. This first one is an example of how not to be a true friend. The prodigal son, Luke 15, he had all these friends as long as he had the money. He was partying all the time, but as soon as his money ran out, his friends ran out. That's not true friendship. But there are several examples of true friendship in the Bible. In Ruth chapter 1, there's Ruth and Naomi. They made a pledge to stay together no matter what would happen. Friendship, you see, is a choice. We can choose to make an acquaintance a friend. We can choose to make someone who we just meet casually a friend, so that they become a close friend or an intimate friend. But it won't happen unless we choose to make it happen. And you see, that's the secret of making disciples. We have to choose to do so. Friendship is a choice. To be a disciple, we have to be intentional about it. It takes commitment. It takes loyalty on our part. Another good example is in 2 Timothy 1, verse 2. Paul and Timothy, they had a father-son relationship going. In fact, Paul calls Timothy his son in the faith, when actually they weren't related at all. But I have Christian brothers who are really closer to me than my own brother is. And I think that's the way Paul and Timothy were. It takes that kind of friendship to be a disciple. Back in the Old Testament, 1 Samuel chapters 18 through 20, 1 Samuel, David and Jonathan had a pretty good friendship going on. In fact, their friendship was so strong and true, not even an order from the king could break up their friendship. When the odds are all against us, we have to remain true to our friends and to the disciples that we're making. Look with me in a minute at what true discipleship and true friendship does. True friendship, true discipleship seeks to make the other person better than they are. True friendships help you develop your full potential and your talents. So you're trying to do that for the person you're discipling, trying to make a friend. Think about it. When you hang out with someone for a long period of time, you learn from each other. You learn what they like to do. You learn their kinds of food. I'll bet if I ask you what is the food that I hate, you'd all say bananas. See? When you spend time with people, you get to know them a little bit. Friendship develops trust. It develops relationships that last. And you learn trust to count on people. True friendship even tactfully points out your flaws so that you can improve them. My wife tactfully points out my flaws all the time. I don't know how well I've improved, but I'm working on it. See, there's an accountability there, where a true friend tries to make his friend better. Tries to encourage them and build them up. And that's what disciples do. See, all of us here today are probably a disciple. And we need to go help look for that person who we can make a friend and a disciple. True friendship with someone, whether it's the acquaintance or casual friend, is a place to start to help them become a disciple, a follower of Jesus. That's a challenge we have today. A true friend comes to your aid when you're in need. That's what disciples do. Disciples see someone hurting and they offer a helping hand, a word of encouragement. A true disciple sends someone a note makes a phone call, sends a text, does a Marco Polo, lets them know that you're thinking about them, that you're missing them, that you want their best interest in mind. True friendship not only prays for someone, but it takes action to do something about her. True friends keep a confidence, and then that allows you to bear your soul to each other. I want to close this morning with a story. Probably won't top Mary Ann, but many years ago there was a great king. Shah Abbas was a king in Persia. And the Shah deeply loved his people. So much so that in order to understand them better, he would disguise himself and mingle among them. One day he went to the public bath and he sat down beside a man who was the guy who tended his furnace. At mealtime he shared the lonely man's food, talked with him as a friend. Again and again the Shah would go and visit with this man. And they became best friends over time. Some time later, the Shah revealed who he was. The Shah waited, expecting the man to make a request for some special gift or favor. But the poor man who tended his furnace just gazed in wonder. Overcome with amazement, the man spoke finally at last. He said, "You left your palace, you left your glory, to sit with me in my humble place, to eat my coarse food, and to care if my heart was glad or heavy. On others you may bestow great riches, but to me you have given a much greater gift. You have given me yourself. I only ask that you never withdraw the gift of your friendship from me." That is exactly what Jesus did. He left the glories of heaven to come down to the sinful world, to be our friend, to show us the way, to hold our hand, to live in our heart, so we can be his friend. That's what the Christmas story really is all about. God sent us his Son to be our friend, so we could follow and be his disciple. Why wouldn't we want someone like Jesus to be our friend? We sing, "What a friend we have in Jesus." We can sing those words so easily. Is Jesus really our friend? Are we obeying him? Because that's what Jesus said a disciple will do. Jesus said, "If you're one of my disciples, you will obey me." John 15:13, Jesus said, "Greater love has no man than this, than that he lays down his life for a friend." Jesus considered us friends. That's why he died for us. That's why he went to the cross for us.
Oh, yes.
He was truly the best friend we could ever have. If you don't know him today as your friend, we're going to sing an invitation hymn, and it's an opportunity for you to make Jesus your friend. And today can be an opportunity for you to make this church home and all of these friends one of your best friends. If you have a decision to make today, we encourage you to come as we stand.